out of all the young players in the let the kids play era of MLB baseball, with Vladimir Guerrero, Fernando Tatis, Juan Soto, Ozzy Albies, Gleyber Torres, Cody Bellinger, Pete Alonso, and such, I think that the young Venezuelan playing for the Atlanta Braves is going to be the best out of all of them. And I don't think it's going to be close when it's all said and done. How you guys doing? It is currently Monday, June 1st. Here in this quarantine, I'm James Sims. And I guess for this for this little soundbite, I'm just gonna go into what makes Ronald Acuna Jr. the best young player and how I think when his career is all said and done, he's gonna be a player that we're gonna look back on and say, wow, this kid was a once in a generation type player. And I mean, it's good to kind of catch players like this at this very moment in their careers, because at the same time, you can watch them play from beginning to end. If you get a chance to watch a Hall of Fame career from beginning to end, then you know you've done something right as a sports fan. So kind of getting into this, just giving you a little bit of background on Ronald Acuna. So Ronald Acuna, originally from Venezuela, he was originally signed by the Atlanta Braves system back in 2014. So he rose his way through the ranks. It took him 4 years to become one of baseball's top prospects. And following that, and I mean, because of course, he was a well-rounded five-tool prospect when he was playing for the Braves. He's 6 foot, 180 pounds, and when he was a prospect, he wasn't as good of a hitter as he was when he got to the pros until the very, very end of the minors. Also, he could play great defense. He could basically do everything well, but the biggest critique is that he wasn't really a specialist in really anything. But they knew that once he got to the MLB, this player, he wasn't going to be a flop. He was going to be one of the early crops of Brave prospects that are going to come in and change this franchise and lead to the Braves kind of dominating the 2020s like they did the 1990s. If you're a baseball fan, you're aware of how dominant that is, and that is saying a lot for this young team, but I'll kind of get into it, as Ronald Acuna Jr. is the first Braves prospect that I will bring up, the first Braves player that I would bring up on this elite list, and there's a lot of reasoning behind it. If you're a baseball fan and you don't watch the Braves, you're very well aware that Ronald Acuna Jr. is coming in to change the league, and if you're a Braves fan, and I am a Braves fan, so I'm trying to keep this as unbiased as I possibly can, but I know there's going to be some bias thrown in there. I think he's an amazing talent, and I think what he's done in his career will show you what he's made of, right? So Ronald Acuna Jr. was called up to the Braves 2018 in his age 20 season. It took him a month and a half or 2 months to come in because there's a rule. I guess there was a contract clause stating that if he waited a certain amount of time before playing in his rookie year, the Braves would get an extra year of control over his contract. So just like other young prospects, the Braves were able to just keep him in the minors for the first part of the season, and then once they brought him up, he was going to be something special, and he was. In the 111 games he played, he would go on to have 127 hits, which is the first stat I look at when I look at batters. He had more hits than games, which I think is impressive. He would go on to bat 293, 26 home runs, 64 RBIs. He also had 123 strikeouts, which is less strikeouts than hits, only by 4, but it was kind of a problem, but it wasn't that big of a problem at the time. He was a rookie. He was only 20 years old. And in addition to being voted 12th in the MVP race, he won the Rookie of the Year over strong competitors like Juan Soto, who was a year younger and played the same amount of games for the Nationals, but didn't exactly have the numbers. And then you had Walker Buehler, a pitcher who was 3 years older, 2 or 3 years older, who played for the Dodgers, who led the Dodgers deeper into the playoffs. But at the end of the day, I guess the voters still overwhelmingly chose Ronald Acuna to win the National League Rookie of the Year in a very, very tight Rookie of the Year race. Ronald Acuna came into the league just kind of gunning. He felt very comfortable at the very, very top of the lineup, which is what he would become known for where I think he set a record for most consecutive games with a leadoff home run, because that's one of his trademarks. That's one of his stamps on the game. He has a lot of He hit a lot of home runs, many of which were many of which were to start the actual baseball game. So fans had to tune in right before the game started just to see if Ronald Acuna Jr. would hit a home run in his first at bat of the game. It even got to a point where a Marlins pitcher like beamed him on the first pitch, and he went out, and just so he wouldn't keep his streak up. So I mean that's how dominant of a player he was as a rookie at 20 years old. And of course, even though he didn't play the full year, he would finish up by winning the Rookie of the Year in Atlanta. So that was his rookie year. So the second year was the second year, which I always like to bring up when we talk about young players, is that when we refer to their rookie season, we like to see how they adjust to the pace and just level of skill of other MLB players. And of course, his first year, he finished 12th in MVP voting. And the next year, he would jump up to being the 5th best player in the National League. In his second year, he was, like I said, he finished 5th in the MVP voting behind names like Cody Bellinger, Kristen Yelich, Anthony Rendon. I think DeGrom got more votes than him, but that's the territory that he was in his age 21 season. So where he would bat 280 in 156 games. He also, in those 156 games, he would finish with 175 hits, more hits than games played. But one critique that was thrown in there was that he also had 188 strikeouts, which is more strikeouts than hits. But at the end of the day, he would go on to lead the National League in plate appearances, runs with 127, stolen bases with 37, and he still finished with 41 home runs and 101 RBIs. He would eventually become an all-star starter for the National League in an outfield alongside Kristen Yelich and Cody Bellinger. It was those two and Ronald Acuna at 21 years old. I think that's very impressive in itself. And he would finish up winning the Silver Slugger in his second league. And of course, his second league was something to really follow up his rookie season, because even in his rookie season, he already had one of the greatest hits in MLB playoff history. He became the youngest player since, I want to say, Mickey Mantle to hit a grand slam in a playoff game, and he hit it in a playoff game against the Dodgers. I was at that game. That was the one game of the series the Braves would win before they lost, but going into his second year, he had to really just make that leap that second year players have to make, that a lot of past MLB greats have made, and Acuna didn't disappoint when it came to that. Yeah, he was 3 stolen bases away from being the youngest player to have a 40 home run, 40 stolen base season, and had this season not been cut short by quarantine, I definitely believe Acuna would have hit that milestone this year. But I imagine the MLB is going to come back soon with a shortened season, and Acuna is just going to come in and show that he's one of the league's best. He was 5th in the MVP voting last year, and now that Anthony Rendon is in the American League, I imagine he's going to probably pull higher. And but that's the kind of player he is. Historically, players or MLB analysts and scouts are comparing him to Roberto Clemente, old player on the Pirates who played a very long and had a very successful career filled with a lot of accolades and such. So, they're comparing him to Ronald Acuna just based on the ability, just like their all-around ability to contribute to their team in a myriad of ways. And, I think that that's a very fair one, but I think what's going to make Ronald Acuna Jr. elite as well is that he's going to be one of the league's best players on one of the league's best teams. And if you're unaware of how the Atlanta Braves farm system is doing and how well they're going to project into the future of the MLB, they've already signed Ronald Acuna and Ozzie Albies to long-term contracts. They're waiting on Mike Soroka, who I also will have a segment for today. And at the same time, they also had one of the league's top farm systems while being a playoff team. And I think the Dodgers were the closest playoff team to the Braves in terms of farm system out of all the playoff teams. And this is over the past 2 seasons. Since Ronald Acuna Jr. has become a permanent, once he's become a permanent member of the major league of the Braves organization, a starter within the lineup. the Braves haven't missed the playoffs, even though it's been 2 years. But it looks as though that streak may not end as soon as we all think. But he's no, it looks as though he's an all-time player on a team that looks to be incredibly dominant. So, of course, if he isn't on your radar now, when the Braves are winning in the 2020s, I imagine he's definitely going to be there. And just considering how young he is and how dominant he's been up until this point in his career, one can imagine the amount of damage he's going to do over the next decade, because, of course, it's the 2020s. I personally think he'll go down as the best player of the 2020s, but we'll see. I can always throw out hypotheticals, but we just have to watch and see and just see what he does. But yeah, that's kind of my spiel on Ronald Acuna Jr. Just really going back, amazing kid, amazing talent. As of right now, he solidified himself as one of the National League's best hitters in a very talented National League, I might add. At 21, he's solidified himself as the face. If Freddie Freeman isn't the face, then Ronald Acuna Jr. is the face of one of the best teams in baseball. And as this team progresses and grows, and as players from their farm system get promoted to the majors, Ronald Acuna Jr. is going to be the central piece that moves the Braves forward. And I think the Braves go as Acuna goes. And I think the Braves will be a very successful organization within this next decade because of the many pieces that they have. But I also think that Ronald Acuna Jr. is going to be the biggest piece, if not Ozzie Albies, Mike Soroka, or the other players coming up. Another thing, now he's moving to right field, and I imagine once the Braves prospects come up, two of which are outfielders, one of them is going to take the center field spot, keeping Ronald Acuna Jr. in that right field spot probably until, for a long time. He has an amazing arm. He's an amazing fielder. He has a lot of defensive highlights for him being known as a hitter. But yeah, I'm just gonna just throwing that into my spiel. Going back again, he's an amazing player on a young team, and I know baseball fans know of him now, but I promise you, over the next 10 years, you won't stop hearing this dude's name. And this is another young player. I like to say with all the young players, it's always good to see a Hall of Fame career from the beginning. And this player, unless he gets seriously injured, knock on wood, this kid is going to be an all-time great. And it's always it's I don't know. As I don't want to come as seem as though I'm just nagging that you have to see him. But I think as a baseball fan, you'd be very disappointed if he gets to the end of his career and you just watch it go by and you didn't get a chance to see him when he was good. If I was urging you to watch one baseball player that wasn't on your team going forward for just the next few years, I'd still say it's Acuna, because it's always interesting to see how players who become the best players in baseball become that way. I mean, I lived in Los Angeles. I watched Mike Trout just come onto the scene and become the league's best player. I think Acuna will have the same arc. And just because I enjoyed watching Mike Trout becoming what he is, I think that if you start watching Ronald Acuna now, you're going to enjoy watching what Ronald Acuna becomes. Because even next year, I think he'll be a lot better than this year. And next year, I think this upcoming season, or the season after that, I think he officially enters his prime, and he will be a very unstoppable force, because as of right now, he still has some flaws, some kinks he needs to work out. And of course, that happens with young players. They're young. But by the time he smooths out all the cracks, by the time he fills out all the cracks, he will be the force to be reckoned with in baseball. So that's really all I have to say. I appreciate you for listening to this beginning to end. I am from Atlanta. I do watch the Braves. The baseball is my favorite sport. So he's my favorite player on my favorite team, on my favorite sport. So I'm really, really trying not to say something that I think would mislead you into thinking that I'm not trying to impart my biases onto people that are listening to this. But I appreciate you once again for listening to what I have to say. And if you do, if you are looking for someone to watch, a baseball player to watch this upcoming season, it's definitely Ronald Acuna Jr. Even though the season's going to be shortened, just take a chance. Just watch a couple of games of his, or just watch a series. He will at least give you one or two or three good highlights in a series, and that's why I think he's a star. He's an elite young player who, if he was 25 and putting up the same numbers, I would still consider him one of the league's top baseball players. Thanks once again. It's June 1st here in this quarantine. I'm going to sign off by saying peace.